welcome to What to Read. I'm Savy, and I'm here with another book review for you guys. So, if you remember from the previous episode of What to Read, on this show I review books by independent authors that haven't gotten as much press, and books are all really good. I'm not going to be doing reviews of books that I don't like here. That doesn't mean every book is going to be like, I'm going to have only positive things to say about it, because, you know, no book is perfect, but I will not be doing reviews of books that I just don't like at all, because reviews take time and writing a book takes time, and I want to make sure I'm putting positive things out there and recommending you guys good books that you'll want to read. So today the book I am reviewing is called The Road Less Traveled. This book is written by a lady named Emily Elliff. Alright, so I'm actually kind of biased because I know Emily. She's actually in one of my critique groups for my young adult writing. We all critique each other's work. But she wrote this book and published this book before I was part of that group, before I met her. So I'm actually not that biased, because I had absolutely nothing to do with this book other than I bought it on Amazon and I read it and I thought it was great. So for some background about what kind of writing Emily does, she likes to do writing where she takes historical figures that people don't know very much about and tells a full story of them. So what I would say she does is she mixes history and historical fiction together, because the books that she writes aren't 100% factual, but they're not 100% fiction either. They're all based on real people, but they're people who there isn't enough of a historical record out there about them for us to be able to have enough to write a full novel based on that. So she makes up kind of the dialogue and the details in between and the smaller relationships, but captures the essence of that person and their historical significance and what it was. So this character is super interesting, so I really am excited to do this review because I think this is a super important historical figure that we should all know about. So I don't know about you guys, but I remember when I was in school, we covered the Civil War every year, middle school, high school, not college, but middle school, high school, elementary school. We learned about the Civil War all the time, but we never learned about women in the Civil War, ever, because it was just assumed that, or the history textbooks would be there'd be this big long chapter and then there'd be a tiny little paragraph at the end that would be women, and it would say women stayed home and raised their kids while their husbands were at war, or women could vote sometimes in some states maybe, or it would just be the saddest little thing, and it would be that couldn't be all women were doing. They had to have had some super big significance in the war, but as we know, history is often written by men, and they tend to glorify the achievements that men had, and so then awesome figures like this girl, Jenny Hodgers, we end up not even knowing about. So I'm going to tell you guys about her today, and then you guys should all read this book so you can know more about her, and you should read the author's note at the end so you know what things are real about her and what things were fictionalized. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But yeah, so Emily, when she writes these books, she does extensive research. She's really big on learning all about history. She goes to archives and accesses historical newspapers. She interviews relatives and descendants of historical figures. So she's really big on making sure that her books accurately capture that time period. So this book, as I've mentioned, takes place in the Civil War. It actually starts during 1848 is the year that the book starts in. And it starts with this girl, Jenny, who is living in Ireland at the time. And Jenny is, she's a 17-year-old girl living in Ireland, and she wants to go to America. Her parents aren't big on that. Her sister lives in America, and her parents kind of want her to stay there, get married to the guy that she's with, and just have a family there. But she really wants to go to America. So she and this guy, they get on a boat together, and they go there. But he has an idea of that on the boat, if she's a woman, she's going to have kind of a harder time getting by on the boat. She might get harassed, or she'll have a harder time finding work, things like that. So he suggests that she disguises herself as a man. So she cuts off all her hair, he brings some men's clothes for her, so she totally takes on a male persona. And the new name she gives herself is Albert. And so she's now Albert. From here on out, she decides she's going to be Albert on her journey to America. But then when she gets to America, she's planning to go back to being Jenny and find some work in the US. But when she gets there, that doesn't work out so well for her, because she gets to New York and everywhere there, half the buildings say no Irish people should not apply, things like that. They're very prejudiced at this time. So she's having trouble finding work. So she goes to find her sister in America, and her sister is doing the stereotypical housewife thing. She's married, she's got a bunch of kids that she's raising, she's not looking for work. But Jenny finds her sister and says, hey, I know I look like a man now, but I'm still me, and I'm looking for work. And her sister says, oh, well, I can, like, set you up with a job, being a maid. And Jenny really doesn't want to be a maid. She's, like, not interested in that at all. And her sister's kind of like, well, there's not many other options for you. Like, being Irish, being a woman, you're going to really struggle to find a job anywhere. So Jenny decides she's just going to stay a man for the rest of all time, because that's going to be easier for her to get work. And what she actually ends up doing is she enlists in the Civil War. So, guys, this is a big deal. Like, I was not, until I read this book, I was not at all aware that there were women fighting in combat in the Civil War. Like 200 years ago, this was happening, and we didn't know about it. Like, why is that not taught in classes anywhere? That's something we need to know about. So that is such an important story, and, like, I was shocked that we never learned about this girl, Jenny Hodgers, in a history class, that there haven't been other books written about her, and that's why I really love the work that Emily does, because she brings to light these figures and these people and that we didn't know about, and they're almost all women. So Emily's actually working on another book right now, which I am critiquing with her in the group, and that's another book about women and their efforts during the Civil War. And even if, like, the women weren't fighting in combat on the front lines, there are still super cool stories about things that they did to help the soldiers and things that they did politically as part of the war effort. And I think more and more of those stories really need to be told. So I'm super glad she's doing that kind of thing. So anyway, so Jenny is still disguised as Albert. She still decides to be a man, and she enlists in the Civil War to fight on the Union Army side. And so that's kind of what the rest of the book is about. It's about her journey fighting through the Civil War as a man, and, like, she stays disguised the whole time. No one ever finds out that she's actually female, and she's able to be an awesome soldier until the day she dies. And she doesn't die in the book, so that's not a spoiler or anything. So a couple things about this book. So after I read this book, I ended up going online and trying to do more research about Jenny Hodgers, because I wanted to know more about who she was, what was real, what wasn't real. So a lot of the, like, details in the book aren't real, like her relationships with her parents and her love interest and things like that. I think those were a little bit more fictionalized, but, you know, her disguising herself as a man and fighting in the war, those parts were real. So after doing a little bit more research on her, I learned that even after the war was over, she chose to continue to take on Albert's persona to be a man until the day she died. And there's a lot of people who have different speculations on Jenny's life and what she did. Like, some people, you know, this book kind of takes it from the perspective of she disguises herself as a man for the opportunities that were available to men at the time, and that might have been what happened. Some other people think that she was actually, like, one of the first, like, well-documented transgender people, because she became a man, and then I guess he then remained as Albert for the rest of his life, and nobody actually found out that he was actually biologically female until he was very old and needed medical care, and they had to take off his clothes and see what his body actually looked like. So I thought that was fascinating too. So I'm not sure which one of those things is actually, like, the real truth. I'm not sure if that's totally known, since this isn't as well documented of a story. But either way, that's a super important story. Like, you either way, you have, like, one of the first transgender soldiers. That's a really important story. Or you have, like, a female soldier on the front lines in the Civil War. So, like, either way, that's a story people need to hear about. Why aren't we telling that and teaching that, like, in history classes? So I only have really one negative thing about this book, and that's the back cover description. I don't think does a good job of telling what the story's about. So if this book is ever going to get, like, re-released or the cover redesigned, I would hope that they would just change the back cover, because the back cover kind of, I'm not gonna, like, just read it to you, but it's kind of just talks about, like, how she wants to travel and go away from Ireland, and about Johnny, who's the guy that she's interested in, who they might get married, and he, like, wants to marry her, but she doesn't want to settle down. She wants to, like, go see the world and all of that. So it kind of just talks about that. And it does mention that she disguises herself as a man, which is like the big inciting incident. So it mentions that, but it doesn't say that she goes and fights in the Civil War as a soldier. And I don't know if they did that maybe to avoid spoilers on the back cover, but I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that's like a major concept of the book, and I didn't know that when I started reading this. I was like, oh, I'll read this because I know the author and I like her and I think this book might be good. But when I got to the part where she actually became a soldier, I was like, whoa, this book is really good. I wish I knew that going in. So I think if we have that part going in, a lot more people would be really excited and really drawn to this book, and I think it could be marketed really strongly in that way. So I highly recommend this book to everyone wanting to learn more about history and wanting to learn more about women in history. I think this is a fantastic book. Emily Elif doesn't currently have any other books out right now, but she has a few that are in progress, so I'll make sure to let you guys know when she does release something new, but I do recommend this. Yeah, so I hope you guys like this book. If you choose to read it, I hope you enjoyed the review. If you liked the review, please consider subscribing to our channel. Please look forward to Cice's video coming out later this week. And yeah, happy reading, guys!